You've just come back to your hometown island for your dead friend's funeral, and you find out that her death wasn't an accident. And now you're being hunted down by these terrifying monsters called shadows, all because you found the power to change the past. And it's not going to be that easy. You'll have to die again and again before you'll have any chance of saving everyone you love. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat Summertime Render, Part 2. Oh man, these kids, they're going to get themselves brutally ripped, torn, shot, smushed, poisoned by nasty shadow demons. And it's only episode 13. Ugh. Shinpei here has just discovered that he has an insane power. He can relive the exact same day over and over again each time he dies, along with his best friend Ushio, who's actually a fake human. I'll explain in a sec. He's failed to save the world, and just saw all of his teammates get their heads blown off by these things called shadows. With all hope lost, he quickly dies and repeats the same day all over again, but this time with a new game plan to save the world. Okay, this is a lot of information, but basically this kid came to this island for his best friend's funeral, but then in the span of one day finds out a bunch of crazy shit. Like for one, there's these alien crazy shadow demon things that kill people and have the power to copy the identity of whoever they kill. And it turns out, Shinpei's best friend Blondie over here was killed by a shadow who actually turns out to be a good guy. Long story. And he gets sent back one day into the past for the millionth time. Shinpei will now need to re-recruit all of his friends again to stop the shadow god Haine. He needs to stop Haine from consuming everyone in the town within the next 24 hours, or she'll be able to leave the island. Okay, now we're all caught up. And now back to the story. Shinpei and Shadow Ushio suddenly appear in front of their two teammates from the last time loop. Shinpei tells this old man and glasses girl that they've met before that he's relived this day 5 times already. His plans to stop the shadows has failed every single time. Great track record. But each time, he's gained new information about what the hell is really going on. But the old man is not listening and suddenly figures out that Shadow Ushio is, surprise, a shadow and prepares to blast off her sweet face and ruin Shinpei's plans. Okay, whoa. I would say hold the music. Hold up, stop it, don't shoot her. This is insane because right now there is so much going on. Shinpei at this point needs to tell his teammates to calm down. The reason why old man is freaking out is because Shadow Ushio is a part of a mysterious race of creatures that have inhabited this island for centuries in secret, and now their shadow god is trying to reach its full terrifying power. And to top it off, every time Shinpei goes back into the past, the time from which he goes back into the past gets moved up to a certain date, the summer festival. Every time Shinpei dies, he doesn't go back to the exact same spot in the previous day. Oh no. The amount of time that he's able to go back into the past actually gets less every single time, which means some events in the past are starting to become permanent. And that means despite his powers, he doesn't have the time, literally, to mess around. Shadow Ushio is the only good guy, or well, good girl, on Shinpei's team who can actually go with him back into the past. Which is why he can't let her die, because she's crazy useful. She's got a bunch of really sweet, crazy shadow powers that don't make sense, but just roll with it. If I was Shinpei, I would have thought up of a way to speed up this process of having to prove the validity of my story to these two each time we come back to life. While I know that these people are from the last time loop, they technically don't know me in this time loop. And that means the first tactic that we should have used would have been to ask them point blank in the last time loop the answers to some of their most personal information that only they could have known. Like when was the first time they had a near-death experience? Or when was the time they lost their, well, you-know-what card. Making them go into nasty details about the specifics, and then by using this information, each time we came back to life, we simply could have proven that we've met them before by telling them their most personal information. This would have saved me a lot of time, which we don't have much of anyways. Shadow Ushio tells Old Man that she's now on the good guy team, and tells him to chill out. Shinpei proves that he's the real deal by revealing that he knows Glasses Girl's true identity, and reveals that she is an expert shadow hunter with a secret power, and she has come back to her hometown to stop the shadows. But he tells her that without him and Ushio there to help, they'll all die within the next 24 hours anyways. Glasses Girl finally believes Shinpei and thinks that since he can time loop, one of his eyes must belong to the shadow god of this island, this girl, Haine. Somehow her eye went into Shinpei. Ugh. And that is how he got these powers. Concerned about the mark on his hand, Glasses Girl asks Shinpei where he got it, but he tells her that they don't have time to make small talk, because that was his biggest mistake. Shinpei here then warns her what will happen in the future if they don't stop the shadows. This OG shadow guy and his bad guy team will feed everyone on the island to Haine, the island god, and she'll finally be strong enough to leave the island. He quickly comes up with a game plan to capture this little girl who looks super innocent and cute, but is actually being controlled by Haine. Too weak to be super evil and overpowered. Haine uses this little girl and her super fake shadow family to travel around the island undiscovered. But if they can capture her, then Shadow Ushio might be able to use her shadow powers to finally destroy Haine. Nearby, Shinpei's close friend's dad, this guy, calls to somebody mysterious and asks about Shinpei. Why are him and Glasses Girl looking into the early deaths on the islands and thinks that they're up to something? This guy's working with the bad guys, just so you know. But the mysterious voice on the phone says that they'll handle taking out Ushio, Shinpei's greatest asset, by taking out her family and Shinpei very soon. Later, Shinpei's gang decides to redo their plan the exact same way they did in the last time loop because that makes total sense, but this time, they're going to try to erase the little girl using Shadow Ushio's powers. Shinpei thinks because of his powers, he can now pretty much predict the future, but he has no idea how wrong he is. Cautious like before, Glasses Girl heads into the little girl's house and repeats her actions just like the last time loop by kicking ass. It's super awesome, and everyone thinks that this'll be a piece of cake, but suddenly they see her fly right out this window, and she hits the floor. Her arms have been severed. She tells them something in this time loop has gone horribly wrong, right as her face gets smashed in by Haine's bodyguard, OG Shadow. Everyone is horrified and doesn't understand how OG Shadow and little girl could have predicted their moves, but that's when this evil little snipe of a girl reveals that in one of the previous time loops, insert video here, see it? Check it out, it's a good video. She marked Shinpei's arm with her hand and absorbed the memory of Glasses Girl the last time she killed her, and because of this, somehow, she now has the ability to follow Shinpei into any time loop he goes to. And oh, by the way, she knows about all of their old plans that they tried to do before. Shinpei stands frozen in fear as OG Shadow swiftly kills Old Man and gets ready to kill him too, but Shadow Ushio quickly chops off his head and resets the time loop. Defeated, the two travel back in time to try to kill the little girl, or Haine, all over again. Alright, plot twist, bigger than when Akira ended up kicking the bucket in Devilman Crybaby. The only card that Shinpei had up his sleeve, little girl can now do it too, to an extent. While going back into the past, Shadow Ushio talks to Shinpei and says that she thinks that Haine is sort of piggybacking off of Shinpei's time loop, meaning she always is going to be able to find him, no matter how many times he loops back or where, and that she already knows all the stuff that Shinpei did in his previous time loop, which pretty much means that he has to come up with some new plans that he hasn't done before, which makes this anime one of those rare ones where the bad guys are actually smart. Shinpei having one of Haine's eyes means that he could have assumed that the bad guy from the get-go would have probably had some powers that he didn't know about. Gee, maybe you should have considered that one, Shinpei. He should not have assumed that his good guy team had the upper hand just because he had some powers. After all, his eye does belong to Haine, the enemy. Shinpei thought way too little of his enemy and got lazy with his planning even though he tried his best. He should have thought a little bit more. And also, Shinpei cares way too much about his friends. Everyone dying here proves Shinpei's greatest flaw. He wants to save the world without losing anybody, and in particular, this close friend of his called Mio. Because now, while this girl may not seem important compared to the other badass boss babes on Shinpei's team, she's actually the most important person here to Shinpei. The Shadows know how important Shadow Ushio is to Shinpei's plans, but if they figure out how close Mio is really with Shinpei, then they'll likely go after her. And if she dies, Shinpei will without a doubt try to reset his time loop in order to save her due to his strong attachment to her. And aside from trying to stop the bad guys, Shinpei should have tried a little harder on how to either hide Mio and keep her safe from harm, or keep her close to him at all times due to this reason, or at the very least begin preparing for the cold hard fact that some of the people on his team might not be alive by the end of this adventure, because if the enemy figures out his weakness, it's all over. Shinpei arrives back in the past, but this time really into the past and not his. He realizes that he's looking into someone else's past, Glasses Girl's memory, her past, and he is so confused. And he sees Glasses Girl, now a kid on the island. Shinpei watches her sit with her classmates and this kid, and teenage Glasses Girl then tells them that she's made a new friend in the forest. That's not weird, but they don't believe her. So she takes them to the dark woods and tries to show off her friend through this window, but no one shows up, making fun of her. The friends leave as Glasses Girl's mysterious friend finally appears, and Shinpei sees who it is, and he is shocked. It's Haine. He's beyond stunned and realizes that his teammate used to be friends with his worst enemy. Whoa, this is a big one. Shinpei being unable to control his powers basically means that his powers have now turned him into a walking dream catcher. Instead of a web that catches dreams, he's a web that catches anyone's past if they get too close to him, and this could be useful. Now, while it might be easy to panic at this point, this discovery of his could actually be the hidden ace up our sleeve, because by getting an intimate look into the lives of other people, I would begin to try to test this theory out right away in the next time loop. I know I have a limited amount of times that I can go back into the past, but I would be willing to sacrifice 1 or 2 loops to figure this out. The next time I go back into the past, I'm going to try to will myself to be able to access information about the people people who are near the shadows and learn about their origins through a person who might be able to clue us in on the shadows' weaknesses. Which, by the way, my good weeps, there is somebody who knows about the shadows and their weaknesses, and that is this guy, Redhead Guy's dad. Our team member's dad. Basically, Redhead Guy's dad worked for the town coroner office, and we all found out in the previous video that he's been working for the shadows for years, feeding them real humans because he wants to save his wife. Oh, so romantic, but not important. He's a sort of good guy doing really bad things out of love. And even then, that's not important. The real important thing is that if we can get to him, we can use our powers to try and look into his past and find out any info that we can that we could leverage against Heine, because he likely knows a lot about her. Shinpei watches Glasses Girl and his mortal enemy hang out and do normal friend stuff, sort of, and sees how sweet and kind Heine used to be. He continues to watch the memory when he hears Heine mention that she's now gotten very hungry, too hungry to even function. And the food that Glasses Girl has been bringing her up until now is no longer enough, and now she needs to feed. Glasses Girl runs off to quickly find more food for her, but that was her biggest mistake. Too hungry to wait, Heine heads off into the forest to look for food, but that's when she suddenly runs into a certain somebody that Glasses Girl knows, and she uses her shadow powers to devour him whole, and she copies his soul into her body. But out of nowhere, Glasses Girl shows back up and is shocked. Heine has just killed her brother! Now that fortunately her munchies have gone away and now she's less crazy, Heine realizes what she's just done and begins to freak out, so much so that her magical eyeball freaking pops out of her body and runs away. It's gross. And the shadow spirit of Glasses Girl's brother escapes Heine's body and jumps right into Glasses Girl. Heine disappears into the ground and two evil shadows show up. This little piece of shit tries to attack her, but she is saved by Old Man. Yeah, he's still old, but he's less old. But unfortunately for them, he's no match for these shadows and is about to get killed when Glasses Girl's brother takes over Glasses Girl's body, easily killing these two and saves Old Man. Glasses Girl then realizes that thanks to Heine, she's now fused her mind and soul with that of her brothers, and they now share the same body, meaning she'll be able to switch control between her controlling her own body and her brother controlling her body whenever Glasses Girl wants this to happen. She's now gained semi-temporary shadow superpowers. Oh yeah, and it gets better. She now has the power to even see 2 seconds into the future somehow, but that's not important. The point is, this is how Glasses Girl and Old Man met and why Glasses Girl left the island years ago. Okay, we've just had big developments that we need to address. The first is, the reset point keeps getting later and later, meaning that if he keeps resetting this time loop, his saved lifespan will soon begin at the point where it all ends, at the summer festival. And at that point, it's gonna be too late to save anything. But to be honest, there is something that he should have noted way sooner, is that Glasses Girl royally screwed Shinpei over so bad. And this whole time he didn't even bother to maybe share this information with me? Like, what gives? She never told me about her old relationship with Heine. If I was him, I would have walked up to her very calmly and demanded to know why she didn't tell us about this important piece of information. Ugh. I'm calm, I'm fine. I'm just saying that maybe it would have been a good idea for us to be able to go check out the place where it all began, because by us doing this sooner, we could have probably saved me a couple of time loops, but hey, I'm not salty about it, I'm just mad. He has resources around him, why doesn't he use them even more? And why doesn't he even bother to ask more questions about his resources, aka Glasses Girl? But then again, he's a young kid who's been given the tall order of trying to save the world with time-traveling superpowers where he has to constantly see everyone he loves die over and over again. So maybe we should cut him some slack. Later that night, Shinpei calls everyone over that he's fought with before to meet him at this school hall. Shadow Ushio then uses her powers to download the memories of the previous time loops into everyone's brain, catching everyone up to speed. Gee, isn't that convenient? Including the dead, real Ushio sister, Mio, who's another one of Shinpei's best friends who has a very big crush on our main man, but who cares about that? Shinpei then tells everyone that Mio here has a shadow, and that he's found out that Mio's shadow will be coming this way soon, and this time they need to be ready to fight. Nearby, Old Man is taking watch outside of the school when he is suddenly stabbed in his big thinker by Shadow Mio. She takes hold of his rifle. Meanwhile, Shinpei continues to give an epic speech about saving the world when he suddenly appears in his kitchen, and he has no idea how he got here, and he then realizes that his day's just been reset, which means somehow he just died. Shadow Ushio then bursts into Shinpei's apartment, and she tells him that she followed him back through the loop and brought the Mio in this time loop up to speed as well. Great. She tells Shinpei that the shadows killed him in the last time loop, and Shinpei then realizes that the shadows have now started to kill Shinpei on purpose, and they're no longer trying to capture him alive. Shinpei sweats a little bit and reveals to these two the worst news of all. He's losing his powers. And if he keeps dying at this rate, he'll soon die for good. And this is what the shadows must have figured out. He tells them he thinks he has one more time loop left before he dies forever. With such high stakes, they then quickly head back to the school to try and recruit their shadow-killing army once again. But this time with a different plan. Shinpei sweats and reveals to them the worst news of all. The start of each time loop is pushed forward with every reset, meaning some events are starting to become permanent. If he keeps dying at this rate, he'll soon die for good. And this is what the shadows have figured out as well. Okay, this is really bad. Shinpei has now finally realized that there's a limit to his powers, but now also the bad guys have realized this too. And it's likely that Haine didn't realize this initially, until she latched onto Shinpei with her hand that one time. And that's when Shinpei royally messed up, because this changes the whole dynamic of what's been going on up until now, and is actually a really big deal. If I was Shinpei, I had to think about this a little bit, because before, in our previous video, the shadows knew about our powers sorta, and that's when they just tried to capture Shinpei alive. That mindset actually gave Shinpei a huge advantage. But now, all the bad guys have to do is simply exploit Shinpei's power by killing him again and again and again until he dies for good. And this approach, by the way, is way less hard for them and way more harder for us. At this point, in order to effectively serve our mission, I would begin looking myself as more of a general and use my teammates as more or less troops, because our powers made us the strongest player in the game. But now we found out we have an Achilles heel. Our powers still make us the most important player here in a way, but we are no longer the dominating force that the bad guys thought we were. I would begin assigning orders to certain people to my team rather than being on the front lines with them, by using certain things such as walkie-talkie, cell phones as a means of commanding, controlling, and understanding the situation from a safe distance. And in this way, I'll be out of the direct line of fire, because we don't have many more chances to be able to screw this up and reset and go back in time. At the school, Shinpei tells them that the shadows know their strategy from the last time loop, and now they have to switch it up. Using the handprint of Haine on his arm, they plan to use it and lure her away and kill her right in the stadium. Hearing them come, Shinpei quickly goes outside to battle the Shadow Army face to face. Shadow Mio then attacks Shinpei, but he quickly escapes with Shadow Ushio's help. And just then, Old Man takes out some of the evil minions, and Little Girl gets a little bit mad and goes after Shinpei with her shadow parents. While on Shinpei's side, they get to work on killing everyone else. Running fast, Shadow Ushio and Shinpei set Glasses Girl up to take out the rest of the incoming shadows, firing left and right and doing some sick hand-to-hand combat. It's amazing. Go watch it. But that's when Glasses Girl finally uses her future-seeing powers and sees Shinpei about to get shot, so she takes a bullet for him, saving his life. But it's not what she thinks. She realizes that Haine must have absorbed her powers as well in one of the previous time loops about to die. She gets saved last minute by Old Man, allowing the good guys to get some distance. Luring OG Shadow away and Little Girl into this room, they set up a trap for them. Confused, OG Shadow then notices Shadow Ushio's hair floating above them. Using her powers, she transforms those strands of hair into piles of gasoline, because yeah, she can do that with her hair. And this whole place is about to blow up in flames. And Shinpei throws a lit match on them, setting everything on fire. Oh, it's freaking awesome. I love it. Thinking this is the one thing that can take them out, the good guys watch the monsters scream in pain, and Little Girl quickly tries to escape, but is shot down by Shinpei. Wasting no time, Shadow Ushio quickly grabs Little Girl's finger, saying a really long good guy speech, and takes forever to kill her. And so because of this, she takes too long, surprise, surprise, and she gets grabbed by OG Shadow, and he drags her into the fire. Shinpei tries to stop him, but gets shot, forcing him to watch Shadow Ushio get burned alive. But that's when Ushio pulls a switcheroo and tricks OG Shadow, coming up from behind him and gut punches him sideways. She quickly tries to scan his data, but realizes there's a human inside of this monster, and almost discovers the bad guy's true identity. But that's when this little girl freaks out and quickly escapes with her bad guy team, putting out the fire in an instant, and prevents Shinpei's crew from figuring out the biggest secret out there. Shinpei quickly goes up to check up on Shadow Ushio, and Shadow Ushio freaks out thinking like, oh no, my boyfriend died! But he reveals that, hey sister, I'm wearing a bulletproof vest. So he's Gucci, and the gang celebrates their first little victory, because for the first time in all the time loops, no one has died. Oh man, isn't that great? This is a huge deal, because think about it. Basically, the longer Shinpei stays alive in one time loop, the more leeway he'd have with his time loop in case he did die. Imagine a cliff that is constantly breaking off bit by bit as time keeps moving forward. That is the reset point. If Shinpei falls behind that line, then he falls off the cliff and will be dead for good. But the longer he stays alive, the more and more time he'll gain. Isn't that awesome? I think it's great. But anyways, back to the story. Shinpei then finds out that his crew managed to capture Mio's shadow, and Shadow Ushio cuts her mental link from Haine, freeing Shadow Mio, sorta, and they get to work on making her a good guy. Later that night, she tells them that as a shadow copy, she now has all the memories of Mio, and that she will die in 1 week if she doesn't kill the original Mio and take her place. And she reveals that since they cut her connection to Haine, she's now lost her need to kill them. My, how convenient and helpful. Shinpei then thinks that Redhead Guy's dad probably knows what Haine really wants, since he's been helping the bad guys for years. Redhead Guy mentions that he was supposed to meet his dad tonight, and the group prepares to tag along with him to go visit his dad at his evil daddy clinic. Fearing the danger headed their way, Shadow Mio is assigned to protect the real Mio. My, that's awkward. She basically insinuates to the real Mio that she likes Shinpei, and it gets really awkward. The group quickly reaches the terrifying clinic, and everything has been cleared out. Suspicious. Shadow Ushio then senses a shadow nearby, and they head down this hallway, hearing some noise from the hospital basement. And they prepare to go down to where life doesn't exist. Noticing bullet holes on the walls, they realize where they're headed, the morgue. Then Redhead Guy's mom's wheelchair is spotted, and they get ready to prepare for combat, discovering a secret room, but they realize that one of the main objectives of why they went there also is that the real Shadow Ushio's body is not there anymore. It's been moved. Shinpei thinks the shadows must have moved her, because they know that had Shadow Ushio been able to fully copy the real dead Ushio's body, she could have used the real dead Ushio's body to heal Shadow Ushio. My, that's complicated. Getting nervous, Shadow Ushio asks Shinpei if he wants to reset the time loop and try all of this again, but Shinpei says nope and is determined to find Redhead Guy's dad. They quickly discover this spooky hallway, and Redhead Girl, which is Redhead Guy's sister, it's a long story, mentions that they used this secret tunnel to deliver dead patients to Heine, and in the distance they notice Redhead Guy and Girl's mom choking their dad. Shadow Ushio quickly knocks out the mom and cuts the connection between her and Heine, and demands to know what Evil Pops knows. He tells them that Heine ordered him to speed up preparations for the summer festival, since she now knows that Shinpei is getting closer to stopping them, and they see that Redhead Guy's dad has clearly lost it. He tells his redhead kid to join him in order to please Heine, but they tell him that yo, she's evil and is not going to keep the promises she made to him. But Pops gets mad and disarms Redhead Guy and tries to kill his daughter. Whoa, rude. But it's not that easy. He finds out it's actually Shadow Mio in disguise. Woohoo, switcheroo. Defeated, he refuses to talk, so Shadow Mio tries to copy him but finds out something crazy. He is immune to being copied, which means that he must have been copied before. It's strange, and Evil Pops thinks that she's wrong, because if he can't be copied, then this means that everything Hein has promised him has been a lie. He then tells them that Heine promised him that his entire family would be copied into shadows, including the kids once they're dead, and they would go to live on in eternity in another dimension forever. But out of nowhere, the crew notices one of Evil Dad's nurses holding the real Ushio's corpse. She tells them that the shadows have officially cut ties with Daddy and his useless family, announcing to everyone that in 2 days the world will come to an end. Shinpei shoots a big fatty right at her gray matter, but misses. The gang thinks following her is a trap, and they decide to focus their attention on Evil Pops. And he takes an anime second and suddenly turns good and begins to talk, telling everyone that his wife actually died long ago, and this woman here in fact is a shadow, causing Redhead Kid to freak out and realize why his dad did what he did. His dad just really wanted to bring his whole family together, and he didn't care how or what he had to do it. The dad then says that killing Heine isn't that simple. If she dies, then all the shadows will die with her, including his wife and Shadow Ushio. And Shadow Mio, but we don't care about her. Shinpei freaks out for a hot sec, but Shadow Ushio puts on a brave face and tells him they've had a good run, but they gotta get past it anime quick, and they do, and they refocus on their mission because they don't have much time left. Evil Pop's wife then emotionally slaps some more sense into Daddy and demands he helps them save the kids and stop Heine no matter what. It's a real cry fest, and Evil Pops finally decides to fully help them to save the world. Okay, so I know we just went through a big cry fest and it was so emotional and beautiful, but these guys are missing the point. Heine is too weak right now to leave her cave. That's a good thing, and that's why she's been using this little girl to sort of VR her way around town. And this means that the real key player here is OG Shadow. He has been her general. He has been the leader of her evil shadow demon army. He's been the one carrying out most of their evil plans. And the one thing that also doesn't make sense is that Redhead Guy's evil dad told us something. He said Heine simply wants to go to a secret shadow world and live out the rest of her days free and in peace. But judging from OG Shadow's batshit crazy personality, I'm having a real hard time believing that's really what OG Shadow wants as well. Because it's a very real possibility that OG Shadow is not going to follow the Shadow God into this other world. Having lived through many time loops, I would say I have a pretty good idea as to some of the psychological makeup of OG Shadow, and that this guy probably has more evil intentions than even Heine. Because if I'm Shinpei and I saw the past of Glasses Girl when she was with Heine, we found out that unlike OG Shadow, Heine genuinely wants to be set free, and at her core in the very beginning wasn't that bad of a person, sort of. I mean, she did eat her brother, ouch. But the point of all this, once Shadow God Heine leaves, there's gonna be nothing to stop OG Shadow. Especially if we think about the huge reveal that OG Shadow is part human, which puts him at risk for psychologically being disloyal to Heine. Because the fact is, he is not a carbon copy of the shadows, and this makes him not as predictable. Because if OG Shadow is part human, then that makes him just as untrustworthy to Heine as he would be with Shinpei or anyone else, or even me. And this makes him him the biggest threat out here. Evil Daddy, now turned into a good guy, opens a safe full of his patient records. The list has the names of all the people that he's ever fed to Heine, and he tells him that he knows the true identity of OG Shadow. He was the first child that Heine ever gave birth to, and was actually the founder of their family-run clinic years ago? What? Oh my gosh! The team then have their final night's rest, and they prepare to stop the summer festival in 2 days. The next day, Shinpei wakes up and realizes that this is the longest that he's ever been alive in a time loop, meaning the approaching edge of time has now been pushed farther back. It means that he can now reset the time loop a few more times if he really needs to. Well, that's a good thing. But he begins to notice that it's not all good news bears. His eyes have now begun to hurt, and he has a minor headache that has begun to get worse. Today's job will be to hunt down more shadows and take out some of their ranks before the final battle at the summer festival. They plan to hit up all the previous areas where they encountered shadows. The real Mio tells Shadow Ushio some great news. She's found some of the real dead Ushio's hair tangled in the shower drain. Excited as hell, she uses the hairs to heal her shadow body because yeah, she can do that with the real dead Ushio's hair. And the team heads out to kick ass. Shinpei and Shadow Ushio hit up a bunch of houses they've passed before as Shadow Ushio senses the presence of shadows nearby. They follow the evil scent into the forests when they suddenly hear screams nearby and go to check it out, discovering the shadow that is about to eat these children. Shinpei quickly kills the shadow, but he is horrified. He's just killed the shadow of his childhood teacher. They fill in the kids on all the craziness of what just happened and tell them to keep their mouths shut about what they just saw. But the horrors aren't over. They discover blood trails nearby and realize it's fresh. They suspect that Heine is consuming more people in order to heal herself. Out of nowhere, Shadow Ushio loses her mind for a second and turns into a little exorcist girl. Scary. She starts whispering some creepy words to herself and looks really evil, but then snaps out of it and the two quickly move past it. Shinpei calls the team to tell them that he and Shadow Ushio have only killed 3 shadows in total, and they haven't nearly found as many shadows like they have in previous time loops. He thinks that the shadows must now be hiding to avoid suspicion and are trying to rest up before the big battle at the summer festival tomorrow. Unlike previous time loops, Heine has told them that Shinpei will be coming for them now, and they are fully alert. Shinpei has a talk with his team, and they begin to suspect that the priest of the town, this priest might be in fact the human inside of OG Shadow. Redhead Guy's dad has been in contact with some bad guy for ages, and he thinks Priest Guy is OG Shadow, working at this shrine. This place will also be where the summer festival, aka the end of the world, will begin to take place. Going unnoticed, this guy has been everywhere in the background since the beginning. I mean, look at this, and this! He's been there the whole time. He's been around for years, and all of these clues make him suspicious as hell. Shadow Ushio says to go and investigate him right now is risky, but Shinpei thinks that he's smarter than the enemy and wants to know what he's thinking before he kills him. He tells his team to set up around the shrine and wait for his signal in case shit goes south. He goes to meet Priest Guy with Shadow Ushio watching over him, and these two go inside to talk. Shinpei talks to Priest Guy and tries to figure out how suspicious this guy really is, and asks him if he knows what's really going on. This guy just laughs it off and thinks he's crazy, but Shinpei then takes out the picture that Redhead Guy's dad gave them, and Shinpei demands to know how he stayed the same age for over 70 years. He's caught Priest Guy red-handed, and Shadow Ushio and the whole team gets tense as hell. Oh, back up a bit, I feel like I gotta explain some things. Basically, 300 years ago, the people of this island were starving to death, and then Heine showed up and copied the first person it saw, and then became known as the god of the island. She murdered over 100 villagers and then turned them into shadows, and this is how the island was saved, because apparently there was a food shortage, so she just killed all the real humans, and the fish were able to repopulate. Great. Thinking about it in retrospect though, it makes sense that Redhead Guy's dad went into medicine, and Priest Guy and the other bad guys went into religion. If I was Shinpei, I'm gonna think long and hard about exactly what kind of conversation I'm going to have, because for one reason, he's wearing glasses. Glasses guy energy. It's a thing, look it up. And while there could have been a tactical advantage with figuring out OG Shadow's actual identity, confronting this baddie full-on right in his face is way too risky. Since this guy is OG Shadow, we just literally challenged him in his own home turf, which is probably not the best idea to do. Right now, this guy is still in his human form, which means that his shadow body is probably some sort of armor that protects him from harm. And even worse, it acts like some sort of freaky Iron Man nanosuit that will cover him up and protect him the moment we try to hurt him. And that means that at any point, he could literally ruin our plans if he wanted to. Here's what I would have done. I would have lured him out of the shrine away from his home turf, and then we'll be able to confront him head on. We're going to be in a better position of strength, and more likely not going to get surrounded by evil shadows that I'm sure are hiding in every nook and cranny of this freaky, scary looking temple. That's my plan. Don't do it at his home turf. That's stupid. Priest Guy reveals an evil smile. Shinpei tells him that he knows he's not human, but he isn't a shadow either. He asks him why he's protecting Heine, since he won't be able to travel with her and the other shadows when the time comes. But the man just tells him that he must fulfill his mother's wishes. vanishes. Confused, he asks why he called Haine his mom, and then he shows him another picture of him from 40 years ago. He looks exactly the same age and is holding Haine's first son that she gave birth to. Priest OG Shadow Guy then reveals some nasty news. He tells Shinpei that Haine has been giving birth to his clone for the last 300 years. He then downloads his memory, his consciousness, his soul, you will, into the new baby each time, crushing its soul, and then he lives inside of that baby. And that's the show he's been living this whole time. Shocked, Shinpei asks him the most important question out of all of this. Did he do the dirty with Haine? And he smiles. That's when Shadow Ushio begins to freak out and tells Shinpei to shoot OG Shadow Priest Guy. But he hesitates, forcing Shadow Ushio to appear, and she cuts Priest Guy's head clean off. Seeing Priest Guy dead, they think they've just won the war. They call the rest of the squad waiting outside and tell them that OG Shadow has just died. But out of nowhere, Shadow Ushio gets stabbed by OG Shadow from behind. Dying, she kicks the bucket just as Shinpei loses his shit and starts firing big fatties at OG Shadow's gray matter. But it's too late. In a millisecond, he slaps on the Shadow armor and spears Shinpei right through his guts, sending him out of the temple and impales him right into this tree. While everyone else outside hears the gunshot and quickly goes in to try and take out OG Shadow. But that's when the time loop sets and everything slows down, literally, for Shinpei. He reaches out towards OG Shadow, desperately trying to do anything he can to save his friends, but he can't, and can only watch as OG Shadow gloats inside. Shinpei arrives at his new reset point, where he was just a few hours earlier. But this time, Shadow Ushio is nowhere to be found. He realizes that his best friend has died for good, and now he'll have to take out the Shadow Army without her. What do you guys think about the video? Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think about the video. And also, don't forget to check out our How to Be playlist.